other night when we were waiting. Did you hear that?
All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Start by having the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag is over there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now that we got technology out of the way for the most part, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the minutes from the May 4th, 2022 regular meeting and the May 20th, 2022 special meeting.
Motion.
Second. Moved by Brian Burton, second by Brian Reed. Any discussion, additions, corrections? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So carried. Okay. So this is where we do the superintendent's report. But I'm just going to run with it because we have a little special piece of our program this evening. Typically, every year we invite the salutatorian and the valedictorian to speak, and we're going to do that tonight. But something else that we wanted to do this year was to recognize our top 10 students for the year. I thought that was appropriate. It wasn't my idea, but I loved it, and we're going to run with it tonight. So I'm going to share a quote with you, and then we'll go from there. No one, Sir Robert Baden-Powell once said, "No one can pass through life any more than they can pass through a bit of country without leaving tracks behind, and those tracks may often be helpful to those coming after them in finding their way." So the 10 of you, and I know that all the top 10 are not here, unfortunately, but we're glad that you can make it, that you're here, is that each one of you has left a footprint here at Norwich City School District. You have had an impact on other students, underclassmen. You've had impacts on teachers, administrators, and the community. And you have left a track for others to follow. I think that's incredibly important. High school is a place to build character as well as perform academically. And we want to just recognize you at every opportunity for doing so well here at Norwich. And we appreciate you being students here and having done what you've done and led others forward. So at this time, I'm just going to read off the top 10 students. And if you're here, just stand up for us. That'd be great. So number 10 is Tristan Terry. Number 9 is Emma Mullen. Thank you. Is Stephen Kamen. Number 7 is Zachary Russell. Number 6 is Addison Whaley. Number 5 is Lula Gabone. Number 4 is Meadow Rosenthal. Number 3 is Michael Zhang. And number 2 is our salutatorian, Nolan Reed. Lawrence Squire. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you for coming to visit us. So, I know it's just a short thing, but we obviously want to recognize you and thank you for being wonderful students and part of the community here at Norwich City School District. So, without further ado, we'll move right into our speeches. So our first speech this evening is going to be Nolan Reed, our salutatorian. Come right up and stand up here so that the folks on YouTube can hear you and see you too. So,
Right here.
yeah, that's great. Thanks, Noel.
Good evening. So for those of you who aren't aware, I'm Nolan Reed, although introductions out of the way. I'm salutatorian of the class of 2022. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the Board of Education, Superintendent Ryan for inviting me to speak today. By inviting me here, you're upholding a tradition of like intergenerational dialogue. And I'm really honored to be a part of that. And I'm really thankful for you being willing to hear our voices, the students. So with introductions out of the way, I'd like to start with like a reflection on my 11 years in Norwich. That's when I came here second grade. So the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Norwich specifically is the word community. A tight-knit town that holds great esteem in its values, in its practices, and its traditions. I have great respect for the way, personally, our parents, our teachers, our staff uphold these pillars of tradition, of community spirit, of community well-being in a number of facets of life. So, for instance, you can look at sports. Parents are always going to be in the fan sections, cheering on their students, wishing them well, no matter what the score is. We can be down, we can be losing by a lot. You can be sure that those parents are cheering kids on, that they have pride in their kids. In athletics, not athletics, I just said athletics. In the arts, you can be sure that parents are going to be going to every festival, to every gathering, to be congratulating their kids, to be telling them how good of a job they did. And in academics, you can be sure that they're either in public or behind the scenes rooting on their kids, telling them that they can do it, that they can, whether it's they just need to graduate, whether they know that they can push them to another level, whatever it may be, you can be sure that parents are going to be there. And they make this known. They go on social media, they send letters, they go public, and they make it known how much they care. And I think that's a really important part of Norwich. The fact that parents and the community are so involved in education and care so much about education. And I mean, obviously, everyone has different opinions, everyone has different stances, but the fact that these parents can come together despite these differences, can form a community, can form bonds and share these opinions, like I said, I think is truly amazing. And just, yeah. There are also other facets of life in Norwich, though, that I think are really awesome, specifically of our community, and that is teachers and staff of our school district. So just like our parents, they work really hard to promote the success of our students. They are by all means caregivers, they're educators, and every year they have more and more responsibilities placed on them, especially as staff numbers may increase, decrease, and likewise. I think they do an amazing ability personally in taking on all these extra responsibilities despite a very, not only physically taxing, but emotionally taxing career. Like I said, they are caregivers, they're here for students. This is more than just a job for these teachers. In this way, they've helped us, not just me, students as a whole, develop skill sets that we might not otherwise have had, whether that's social emotional skill sets, whether, for me personally, when I first came here, helping introduce us to the community of Norwich, help us grow accustomed and help us feel like we belong. Teachers do that, and that's really excellent. It's really a debt that I don't think can ever be repaid to these teachers, and they know that, and that's the best part. They don't expect this debt to be repaid. They just expect us to go on and to leave a legacy of progress and success. I'm truly grateful for our teachers in our school. But as with any narrative or story, there's multiple viewpoints to the situation. So as I've talked about, we take great pride in our sense of community, in our sense of tradition, but I think in a lot of ways that these same values really do a great deal to blind us and to harm our community. That is to say, like indulgence in our values of small community, in our traditions, especially in Norwich, I think, can have a blinding effect even despite their positives. So I'd like to say, again, take for instance, the two values that I hold most dear, which is community pride and tradition. These do give rise to many distinct positive aspects in our community, but they also harm us to a great degree. So through tradition, I think our district has failed to remove or alter many outdated practices. Look, a couple of days ago, I think the powder puff football game is a great way to bring together community, but like with any other event and similar events, it also ostracizes students and humiliates them and targets them for being part of a specific demographic, in this case, female students. Yes, it is an event that brings our community together. Yes, everyone takes pride in it, but why are we allowing such events to target students even through the name itself, let alone the actions that are occurring? In organizations such as class or student government, which I happen to be a part of, I think students are elected on seeming popularity votes. These are supposed to be our quote unquote leaders of the school, yet they're allowed to expedite decisions by staff telling them that they should just make a decision without necessarily regarding their fellow classmates, because that would be the faster way to go about it. All while reaping these benefits of positive recognition and acknowledgement, while in many ways failing to represent what I think the values of the school should really be. Through our pride, like I said, the other tenet of what I think makes Norwich great, we've blinded ourselves to underperformance and failure. In our counseling systems, which is a facet of school life I think is so very important, especially in the modern era coming out of COVID and just in general. I think we've really underperformed as a district. I see just an incredible use of passive support rather than active support for students, which is like, we don't reach out to students. We wait for them to come to us. We do not go to them and say, what can I do better? Here's what I'm going to do to include you. We wait for them to come. And what students show time and time again is that when you wait for students to come to you, that they're going to be hesitant, that they're going to feel that they are being left out and that they are not welcome. So in the case of college preparation, which is applicable to all of us, I think there's very little done to ensure that students are appropriately going through the college application process, whether that's filling out their forms, whether that's ensuring they have all the right things down, or whether that's they're not even going to college whatsoever, and what might be their opportunities for immediate employment. For students with mental health crisis, it's remarkably easy, I can personally testify, to go up to a counselor and say, no, I'm okay. I can leave now, and you will expect no follow-up. And that is what many kids want, despite what might be best for them. It's quite frankly very sad to see that these kids who know, and other people know, that they are in crisis, get called down to the counselor's office, knowing that's what they're being called down for, and to say, I'm okay, I don't need to talk, be let out of the room, and then continue to struggle. What if one of these students got pushed one step further, or if it was your kid in crisis? These services are not enough to prevent a tragedy of any magnitude, big or small, from occurring. And it's really sad that just because that hasn't happened in recent years, that we allow it to be a possibility. So in its current state, I think we're really letting down parents, staff, and educators who have assumed these large burdens, as I previously mentioned, to promote the well-being of their kids. How, as fellow members of this community, can we blindly ignore the viewpoints of not only our community members, but our friends and our peers, just because as a district, you are in a position of authority? It's unjust and it's apathetic. We cannot continue to bury our heads in the sand and wait for people to come forward. Promoting success means being proactive. So yes, it is time to roll up our sleeves and make uncomfortable decisions. We need to have difficult conversations, and we need to extend a hand to those in crisis, especially those with differing identities and backgrounds. You will expect backlash if you do it right, especially from those with agendas of hatred and exclusion. You should welcome this and use it to push you forward. That's because I'm not asking that we dismantle our community or our values. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying we harness our value of community, not to blind ourselves with pride, but as a means to promote our own well-being. Community does not mean making decisions uninformed or without the viewpoints of other people. Do that, solutions will come forward, and they will be evident. Be empathetic, be human, and be kind, and thank you for inviting me.
All right, now we'll invite Lauren Squires up to give her speech. She's the valedictory.
Hello, everyone. Like I said, I'm Lauren, and I'm really glad that I can speak here today. And thank you all for inviting me. Like Nolan said, it's really a good tradition that I think we can have our students' voices heard, so I really appreciate it. I know a lot of people in the room were at the honors banquet last night, and I think Mrs. Pelosi really pinpointed it when she said that the sense of community in Norwich is what makes it so special. And that's certainly what I got out of my experience here. The sense of community in this room, for one, between peers, teachers, community members, all around, that's really what makes the town so special. And something I've learned in my experience here, I've lived here since I was 3 years old, and my dad grew up here. The common theme is that you're going to get out of Norwich what you put into it. So the more effort you put in, the more you get involved, all of that, the more you're going to get out of it, the more people you're going to meet, the more opportunities you're going to have. And that's really what makes Norwich so special to me. With that being said, today I was invited to talk about what I think we can improve on as a district. And I'm going to be focusing on the college preparation and the guidance, like Nolan talked about as well. And this is something I really experienced when I was in the high school. I just feel as though many students are going into the college preparation process blind. We don't have that much guidance. We're not given information until our senior year, and then we are absolutely bombarded between scholarships, college application deadlines, SATs, ACTs, everything. It's all congested into a few month time frame, and it's so hard to keep track of. And that's something that needs to be started as soon as you enter high school, and it's simply not being talked about until September of our senior year. And a lot of times the info is given too late because a lot of college applications are due in October, November, and people simply are not doing things in time because we don't know about it. So for example, in my experience, I was not given SAT information from my guidance counselors until June of my junior year. And this was in my AP US history class. Most of the students here were in that class. And when we were given this information, we were quite literally given incorrect information. We were given things that had been outdated, things that had been discontinued in regards to the SAT, about SAT essays, a bunch of expired stuff that we were being informed about. And us students were the ones who had to inform the guidance counselors that this isn't right, actually. We had to do our own research on it. So this is just an example of the type of things that we need better guidance for. And another example, a few months after that, I went to my guidance counselor to ask about the ACT. And I just wanted to know when it was, when the next one was that I could sign up for, and how I go about doing that. And I was told to go online and look it up myself. And this is just, quite frankly, I think that's unacceptable for a guidance counselor. That's their job, is to tell me how I should prepare for college in the best way possible. And I was told to do that information myself by someone, and that's her job to do. I was lucky enough to have an older brother who went through this 2 years prior. He had a very similar experience as me. So I learned from the things that he went through, what I would need to research myself, and the things I would need to do along the lines that I shouldn't even bother asking the guidance counselors for because they weren't going to do. But there's so many people in our class that don't have that older sibling, so they don't know what they need to do for themselves, and they're just going into the process blind. So on a similar note, and a slight shift from college prep, I've also struggled similarly with my class schedule. It's been particularly frustrating the past few years. We've continued to see honors and AP classes dropped, and I understand a lot of that is because of staffing issues, which our district has seen a lot of the past few years. But it is very frustrating for us honors and AP students because we just simply can't get that extra experience that we want. So each year, in my 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year, I've had to draft my schedule multiple times before it's been accepted because there's just simply not the courses for me. This past year, my senior year, I had 5 study halls in my schedule before I eventually got it right and was able to sign up for classes. And that shouldn't even be a thing. We should not be having to have a whole free belt because there's not classes to give students. And one of the most frustrating parts of this process is that there was no updated course catalog to look at. For my senior year, there was no course catalog at all. For the years prior, there was no updated course catalog. I was looking through it and I would sign up for classes that were in the catalog. just to be told that they're not actually offered. So that's definitely something that needs to be changed. We need to be more prepared to offer students more classes, just things along those lines. And yeah, I don't know. I think that will help students in the long run, one with their classes, and then their overall well-being because they're taking classes that they want, classes that are offered. But anyway, like how I started the speech, I think the sense of community that we have in Norwich is the great thing. And I think if we just focus more of our efforts, less on the town itself and more so on our students' futures, then we could get a really overall better environment. So thank you for having me speak today. I appreciate it.
Both Lauren and Nolan for speaking and sharing the information with us. We really appreciate it. So, but I speak on behalf of the board and just wishing you the best success as you move forward, and we'll see all of you on week from Saturday, right? So, thank you very much, all of you, for coming this evening.
You're welcome to stay, but I'm guessing you probably don't want to go through consent.
Yeah,
items.
I would agree.
Action items, but if you want, feel free.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right, Mr. Ryan, you have the floor.
I'll tell you what, just a remark before we get started, right? Yeah, two students that have spent the majority of their career right here, and certainly reflecting on the most recent, which is the last 4 years of Norwich City School District. And I hope what you can hear through that is that, first of all, you had two kids that didn't have to follow, right, that can present to a board of education. That's pretty powerful, and that's a skill set that we don't necessarily see for a lot of students. So bravo for the courage, number one, to get up there and deliver that message. Number two, for the skill set that's required to deliver that message. But I think what you've heard is that, man, we lost our way. I'll say that out loud. We lost our way at NHS specifically with respect to some of these circumstances that have been before us, right? Whether it's the 20% withholding that resulted in the significant reduction in force, right? Where we had to literally overnight determine what positions could stay, what positions could go. And by the end of the week, calling almost 50 people to say you're no longer going to be employed, your position is being reduced. Simultaneously, right, all of the conditions that we had to put in place for COVID and certainly social distancing, the implications it has on staffing, the implications it has on just that overall experience, which is why I was really excited to hear tonight's conversation. Because at the heart of it, there's still a great deal of positive there. But hopefully, again, what you heard was when we talk about student experience, we have to think about that entire trajectory, that entire continuum of students. And man, it's more diverse today than it's ever been, right? And I know that the work that we're doing with our mission and vision, the work that we're doing with really trying to rebuild that foundation for students, it's on the right track. And there's so many things that I'm going to follow up with both of them, let them know that we're aware, right, of those things that they brought up. We're aware we're putting things in place. They just don't see it yet. And that's the unfortunate piece right now is capacity is at a premium. And we'll put some things in place that will impact students moving forward, but unfortunately, we'll be able to touch that. So, bravo. To add the courage to stand up and say that. And thanks for continuing to so, all right, well, we're going to transition tonight, not into a comprehensive review of 21-22 by any means, but really just trying to hit some high points. This is a very busy time of year for everybody in education. And so, I think it was 4:30 when Brian, Jess, and I finally sat down today to say, hey, we really haven't talked about the slides that we put together. Let's talk about flow, literally 4:30 today. So again, what we're trying to do right now is, again, really say to you, this in no means is comprehensive of the things that we're doing, but really want to highlight that path that we're on, right? The work that we've done this year, the initiatives that we've really focused on, and thinking about that continuum of learning for kids, and really trying to reestablish who we are as a learning organization. So 2021-22 by the numbers. So I'm going to start the meeting once again by impressing upon you that this continues to be our North Star. Connecting, inspiring, empowering. From student to student, staff to student, student to community, and certainly staff to community or school to community. All of these things are really important. And quite honestly, if you think about what you just heard from your salutatorian and valedictorian, that's everything right there. That authentic experience, progression of designed experiences that promotes active learning, allowing informed and inspired graduates to leave us ready to contribute to their community and our global society. All of that is in there. And so, it's about the allocation of resources at this point to really recognize that. Here's what we know. When we put this on paper, when we reduced this to writing and said, this is what we're committing to, this wasn't a one-year process. It's not a two-year process. This is something that we'll continue to aspire to and really try to align our practice with. The next piece is that vision that's associated with it, right? How are we going to get there? We aspire to be that model organization, certainly not there yet, focused on continuous improvement, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. And I would fast forward down to where it says collective efficacy, this idea that we believe every member of the organization believes that every child can be successful and that we have the responsiveness that we need in district to ensure that success. And that last piece, serving as a connection to the community that both of our salutatorian and valedictorian talked about and having that sense of pride in. Our focus this year has been around three major initiatives. One, the PLC or professional learning community, where we focused on, after this, again, I'm thinking about the lack of predictability around the pandemic, that big phrase of learning loss. We really had to get focused on what are our kids learning, right? Question number one. Question number two, how are we assessing that learning? Question number three, what do we do when we determine what students are or are not learning, right? That's where that intervention piece comes in. And all of that is part of that professional learning community where we've empowered $70,000 worth of PLT leads throughout the entire district to lead that work. So it's teacher to teacher, it's building that collegiality, it's building that sense of community and collaboration. And again, are we where right now, are we where we want to be? No. But again, we're in year one, we're establishing a professional learning community. Second piece of that is the MTSS work that's associated with it. The MTSS is, again, Brian Reed.
Multi-tiered system of supports.
Nice. Knocks it out of the park every time he's quiz. A multi-tiered system of supports where we're looking at tiering intervention, starting in the classroom, moving all the way to targeted intervention for kids. Really important work, certainly aligned with our professional learning community. And that last piece really focuses on technology and the integration of technology and how that enhances the instruction in the classroom. It's not just a babysitting device for students, right? I'll say it again. These are all aspirational areas for us. These aren't something that overnight we say we're going to flip a switch and be, perfect at it. These continue to be goals for Monroe City School District. It's certainly where our focus this past school year.
So we thought it was critical that we sort of pull out some different data points that we're working with right now, especially as we go into strategic planning in July for next year. So Scott talked about answering question one. So that time that we purchased through contract negotiations to extend the day, teachers have been gathering in teams and really mapping out what is it that kids are learning. So I just wanted to give you a little example of what does that work look like, right? And so here is a blueprint that the teachers are pouring in. What is the core vocabulary learned? How are we assessing? Week by week, what are our teaching points? And then, folding in that piece, what are we doing when kids aren't learning? And I look at these as two pieces, really. It's a roadmap, certainly, for our existing teachers. And then our new staff, coming in, what a supported document to have to be able to hand to them in the summer and say, look, here's the work that lies ahead for you. And these pieces are really living and breathing documents. So this year coming up, we're going to really start talking about each year. Okay, so we're pre-assessing what can we learn from that data to be able to create a SMART goal for our students during that unit. So these are not things that we expect to export to a PDF and put online to collect dust. Rather, these are, this is the work that will continue to be done each and every day on those Mondays and Tuesdays. And on Wednesday, that's when they are really answering that question of what are we doing when kids aren't learning? So when we're noticing that they're following the blueprint and kids aren't making the progress that they want, that's when teachers are saying, we need to circle the wagons and garner the expertise of our colleagues in those MTSS meetings to really get clear on what are we doing when kids aren't learning. Okay. So folks should start to see these being posted online, but again, they're really living documents.
Just talk a little bit about what it means to establish a guaranteed and viable curriculum using this type of framework.
Great. So I'll give you a clear example. I was conducting many unannounced observations this spring, and I'll give you our third grade teachers, for example. And what I love about this, gives me the chills, is that whether it's our self-contained classes or our, at home inclusive classrooms, right? Because it's every classroom. I was, walking through classrooms, and every student had access to that curriculum. For example, in that case, it was fractured fairy tales and writing. So teachers were employing their craft of delivering it a bit differently, but the learning standards were the same. So it's that every child has that equitable access to the same learning standards. And teachers are then coming back around the table to say, okay, we administered this common formative assessment. How'd your kids do? How'd you get your kids to be able to, rise to that level? So they're having those shared conversations. And, it was an interesting implementation at the beginning of the year. That might be a generous word, right, Eric?
Remember, you have a lot of talk right now.
So, but really, when I went back and I'm looking at the number, and again, this slideshow is like by the numbers, right? The number of blueprints for units that have been able to be developed this year, it's really awesome. I'm really, really proud of the staff.
Really proud of this work.
Really proud of the leadership roles too that our leads have taken on. I mean, they are soaking it up. They're asking questions. That part's really remarkable.
So just touched on it just a little bit. This will be on our website. For example, let's say, for example, that a family is looking at what's the right place for me to send my family. They can now go online and access our curriculum to be able to determine, right, what each grade level is essentially learning. And that, by the way, that happens when we have parents that come in and say that I tried to go online and I couldn't find the curriculum blueprint. Right, so it's been a huge focus of our work.
So the other piece that's big right now is, where are our students and how did they go this year? So 3-8 testing was back to normal-ish this year, and those released questions partially released yesterday. So I just need to start diving into that, to start looking at that information. Of course, the Regents exams are ongoing right now, so we'll have those results as well. Our APs, haven't seen those yet. Similarly with SAT, right? So these are all the different data points that we are going to be looking at this summer as we move into our strategic planning. Remember, we talked about our iReady screeners. So those happened for kindergarten to 5th grade. And then our process of benchmarking for reading also happened. It's finishing up right now. I wish I could share some things with you tonight, but it's not done yet. And then NWEA for English and Math in 6th to 8th grade. And this has been a learning curve for everybody this year. Our kids are coming off a couple of years of learning at home and learning in different formats. So we are becoming more of a culture of assessment. And as we look at tying some of these things to programming or acceleration and those types of things, we are only going to grow in our ability to become a culture of assessment. Stamina is something that we are really focusing on as well. So we're anxious to see the growth. I know that some of our teachers already are looking at some of their iReady data as kids are finishing, and they're looking at, okay, some kids grew a lot, and that's expected, and others didn't. And what are the reflections about that? And immersive celebrations of, wow, kids have made huge progress. this year. Yeah, it's a great point of pride and should be.
I stopped into the ELA Regis this morning and saw some of the teachers and said, how's the test? Great Rivers. They were 2.5 hours into it, the room was almost still full. So what they predicted was, man, kids are going to run a stand there and take a Regis exam for some time. These kids were writing. And they were really proud of their efforts. And so at the end of the day, I'm just continuing to work with kids.
So another data point. So another big focus that we talked to folks about in the beginning of the year is the skills that our kids need when they leave here, right? And our teachers are feeling the same way. So we had a committee this year, teacher-based, teacher-led, which was awesome. Really looking at how can we shift our programming to provide a different experience for our kids. So the end result of that is all of our kids at Perry Brown and Gibson next year will experience that guaranteed viable curriculum with science labs that will be built into the master schedule, as well as coding. So just like to put the number up there, you know, that's the number of kids who will have who will be impacted by that next year. And that's again something when we talk about implementation over time. It's a commitment to say next year is the first year of implementation, and we can only grow and get better at that as they come up. So that's going to shift programming at our middle school. So when we talk about coding, for example, our kids will engage with app creators through Project Lead the Way next year. As they come up through and they've had several years of coding from kindergarten, we're going to have to shift that programming because they're going to be so adept with it, which is really exciting. So then shifting to what I like to call the plates. So the other area of data that we have when we talk about our kids is the social emotional learning side. And we have our BIMAS 2 screener that we administered 3 times this year. And I just want to remind you that for our UPK for 5th grade, it's teacher rated. And then 6th through 12th grade, it's student rated. And so our student support services team got together and we looked at the data last week. And this was the area that really stuck out to us, and it's the social piece. So you can see on the side, I'll just give you a minute to read. When the kids go through, they answer the 34-question survey. These are the indicators that sort of lead us to this social piece. And so for these, just giving you a minute to read, for these grade levels in particular, it's really telling, right? That those are the numbers of kids who say that this is a concern for me, and I'm rating myself in this area. So again, as we move into our strategic planning, this needs to inform our practice on our blueprints, right? So if our kids are saying, I struggle to share my thinking, I struggle to maintain friendships, how are we building structures and routines into our instruction that helps kids to learn these skills? Right?
Any questions or thoughts on that slide? I have a lot to take in right there. As you read those indicators on the right,
Makes sense to me.
it makes sense, right? If you think about, maybe some of the behavioral concerns that we've seen this year, should I say the manifestation of behaviors, right, that we've had to manage. Students are identifying they can't work out problems with others, right? Maintaining friendships is difficult. I mean, these are, I talk about it in middle school all the time. It's like 50-50, social learning, social emotional learning, and academic learning, especially in those middle school years. Kids are rating themselves, struggling in that area. Is this a product of the pandemic? I think it's a contributor for sure.
We got 10th grade, we talked about a lot, right? That's a huge academic struggle. It's coincidence, right? That's
Not a coincidence.
pretty late.
So
What I
then,
love about this, I'm sorry, but this is them saying it.
Yeah.
Right? They're reading themselves.
then what is our response? Right, I can tell you, and I'll fold into this when we talk about hiring, but like new professional orientation is ballooning from 1 to 3 days. And a part of one day, a big part of it will be, okay, so kids are coming in the first day. What are the structures and routines that support our work all year? And now I'm gonna give you September's calendar, I'm gonna say you need to plug this in, like, come to the rug, oh, do it again, come to the rug, this is how you know what I mean, like, all those things are gonna be plugged into your plans, because when you go slow, you always say, you gotta go slow to go fast, right? So in order for the learning to happen, those pieces need to be in place, embedded in September, so. And when I'm looking at who we're hiring right now, in terms of folks coming out of college, the poor things, right? So some of them student taught virtually. Most of them were observed virtually. Like right now, I know Oneon said that they're doing all of their student teaching observations virtually. How robust is that experience? I can't imagine it's great, honestly, comparatively to, in person. All right, so another data point. So again, just to steer you to chronically absent means missed 10 or more days. This is as of June 4th.
In those statistics, my kids were probably in the at-risk category just because of COVID and all the things that happened to us. How discerning is the data in terms of like why? Yeah, like if it's a family that has 5 kids and each of the 5 children had COVID, and so the quarantine was like a million years long. Yeah. Is there discernment for that? And then to the state, do they care about the discerning?
So, I mean, it's as good as the reporting mechanism, right? So, parents are reporting it's COVID and it's the excused absences, because that is reported separately as well. It's unexcused and excused. So, yeah, I mean, our great hope will be next year as we move into a more straightforward normal year that these would change. However, I will tell you, when we look at Gibson's is really high, right? So like, are we building good habits at that young age to say school is really important? Because those are the students who can't advocate for themselves.
I mean, I look at that though, no different, I'm not disagreeing, I can look and say, that's the parents. I mean,
Well-
no kindergarten through second grader says, I'm
Of
not going to
course.
school these things. I know you know this, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not
No, but
arguing
that's habits, right?
Yeah.
So, it's how are we, and it will fold into the next slide as well, like, what are the programming responses? What are the supportive responses that we have as a district to say, how can we help you ensure that school is a priority? And to be honest, there are folks in our community who are really working hard. They are working different hours than we were,
Yep.
nights, overnights, and those kinds of things. There's definitely other factors involved. And so how do we respond with supports that help you get your child to school on time?
2 questions. How does this compare to years pre-COVID? And then secondly, what defines an at-risk? And I might have missed that.
Yeah, that was what.
It's 5, it's after 5.
After 5,
Yeah.
missing 5 days.
New York State has terminology.
My kids are definitely at risk.
Well, there's terminology.
Don't
New
show
York-
the card
New
in
York
this
State,
one.
they categorize, by the way, this is an accountability measure.
Sure.
For New York State, you have to maintain 95% attendance across the board for your entire district. And so, I promise you, we and almost every school district in New York State will be identified as being at risk for chronic absenteeism.
So again, I'm confused. Does this include excused absences as well? This number here? So it is skewed
Yeah.
significantly
If it-
by medical issues, by, like Kieran had said, kids that might have missed a month because they have 3 or 4 brothers or sisters.
So is there a way to?
Is there a way to
remove-
pull that out
Yeah.
and see what
Yeah.
the real number is?
And unfortunately, right, the reasons are important to know, but they're still missing the instruction, right, irrespective of the
They
cause.
are, but
You know.
it takes it from an at-risk or chronically absent situation to, they didn't miss school of their own accord or a reason at home. They're missing school because of regulation, essentially is what it came down to. In an outside factor, I would be more concerned about the kids that basically just aren't showing up. Parents aren't getting their kids to school.
And I could be frank with you, there's a lot. So for example, I subbed in the high school, and 5 of 12 were present.
Yeah.
And that was 2 weeks ago. So that's post-COVID.
And
And
again,
that was, 12 days before the vacancy exam.
sure, and I think numbers could be a little different in a senior class in high school versus a fourth grade class.
A lot of factors.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Right, a lot of
But I
factors.
would love to see
Yeah.
the excused absences pulled out of this number, and see what that is.
Yeah.
Because to me, those are the issues.
Well, and
100%.
the very least too, it allows us to communicate with the public that like, look, if this is like, this is the actual percentage of the things that actually are concerning versus the regulatory stuff that families have no control over.
But at the same time, right, what I would tell you is that for purposes of our work, right, what those numbers reflect is mislearning. Right?
Okay.
That's what I want to zoom in on to say, how are we being very mindful of those stats right there? For a student that is taking algebra and needs algebra to understand geometry, right? If I've now missed 45% of my learning of algebra, how can I be successful in geometry? Right? Those are the conversations that we need to be having, right? That we are having, and will inform our strategic planning moving summer. Thank you.
Because the other piece is that the teachers are desperately like, we're ready to teach. And yet we have 5 to 12 here. How disruptive is that to then, how do you go forward on Monday? And how is that fair to the kids who are here, right? So,
Pacing,
yes,
Right.
it's
circling back, reassessing, reteaching, I mean,
Actually, what we teach.
tons. So important stat, right? I think that's just part of that narrative. That's what we're dealing with this year.
And then, another, stat that you see here is really regarding McKinney-Vento. And so when you look at our community right now, you look at column A to column B, there's a significant increase in the absolute stressors that folks are dealing with and coping through. So again, our response in district when kids are coming in saying, I'm sleeping at the Super 8, or I'm living with my cousin's husband's sister, or, all of those scenarios that are very real for our kids, our response in district has to be different.
Again, just this stat alone, think about the impact on the learning for that child. Right? And if you don't have a responsiveness, go back to what Lauren was saying and what Nolan was saying, right? If we don't have proactive work happening in district where we are going to see these kids and engaging in conversation to ensure the need, just basic Maslow's needs are met, right? What's the impact on learning and engagement for those children?
That's students, not parents, right?
Individuals, yeah.
That's nearly 10% of our student population.
It looks like the percent change, last year, this year, I see.
Yeah. So 126 this year, roughly, we have 1,500
Yeah.
plus or minus students.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's almost 10%. That's a,
If
think
you
about it that
have-
way.
If you have one social worker that is responsible for
Yeah.
Kenny Bento, what has it done to her caseload? Right? Just think about the time, the capacity, and those types of things, just for this. And we're not just talking about homelessness, right, at this point. This is about meals, this is about access to medical services, all of those types of things come into play.
When I think about it, an average, I know we're slightly into this right now, but a 20-person classroom, that means a teacher can expect 2 kids
Yeah.
are going to have this situation that is extremely challenging, but not easy to deal with. That puts a stress load on the teachers, if it gets the next, to the next, to the next. This is a shocking
Consistency
number.
for the child, that feeling of like, where am I going tonight?
Yeah.
So when I say to you as Board of Education, we're pursuing a community schools approach, right? These are some of those statistics that really say, yes, we have to. Not should we, could we, this is we have to. It's all about access, which will in turn impact the ability to learn.
So again, what does our response look like by the numbers, right? So how are we responding to supporting staff? Professional learning is a big deal. So we just wanted to sort of encapsulate the number of offerings this year, how many staff participated. There were lots of repetition there. And then I wanted to highlight as well our PLC partners, right? That you'll hear Brian talk about in terms of our funding. They were able to engage that number of staff and just some qualitative feedback there. The elementary teachers wanted more time with their teams. So they were able to really organize strategic planning time with them, called them pop-ups, because that sounds more fun than just professional learning. And so qualitative data there at the bottom, they engaged in exit tickets from the staff every time and really use that information to plan forward and receive very generous positive feedback. And it translates or parlays back into those blueprints. You know, I could say another pride point too is during this work, they were able to create a phonics continuum. So one of the big pieces for our early readers, especially if you look at our March 2020 kindergartners are moving into 3rd grade up to Perry Brown next year. And they, one area that from March to June, which is huge for kindergarten, is really, I like to say, the training wheels coming off with reading and really being able to decode at a high level. And that piece is missing for many of our students still. So the fact that it's the first district I've been at where the grade levels have been able to come together and create that phonics continuum so they can say at the end of every grade level, this is what we expect kids to be able to know and do.
Can you go back just for a second? If you don't go back, it's okay. I just want
I'm
to
not
make
really sure.
a point. Right, think about the professional learning opportunities built into the day. What does that require? Teachers being out of the classroom. Right, during a time when there's a significant absence of substitute teachers. So this was the PO pop-ups was a creative way to go in for a half day, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, pull teachers out, use 3 or 4 subs for those 3, and then engage a whole nother group in the afternoon. So continually looking at creative ways to engage staff. And just not to add to the similar with Jess.
And so it's a balance, right? Because again, they're missing learning for that morning, but yet the impact of that is greater, the output for kids, because teachers have great clarity on what they're teaching. Okay, so this should be like a ticker. So up and down by the moment. Right now we have 22 instructional vacancies in district. It is an all-consuming effort to recruit qualified staff. I can tell you that it is my absolute focus, and we've made some great hires, and there's much more work to do. So it's not just about, and you hear this nationwide, filling spots. It has to be the right people, because we couple this with all the information that we just showed you regarding what our students' needs are, what are some of our demographics, some of the other pieces that we're working with. I can just give you some narratives of, offers. I had an interview yesterday, and the candidate's super frank, like that's her 3rd, and she's already been offered en route by another district, right? Or you're offering, and it's much more than any of us could dream of, like initial offerings.
$15,000
More. And they're like, I mean,
it's a different environment, right? For
So-
those of you in the private industry, it might not be, you're like, yeah, it's just the way it works. It's a very different environment in schools today than it has been in years past. It literally just like the Mockingjay right now. It's Hunger Games hiring practices in Mockingjay.
And I can confirm that, I've been in education HR now for a decade. It's incredible. It's not just here, it's every place in the state. I saw that 20 number that you said this morning. I felt pretty good because I'm shared, my other district is at 30 something. Right, and so this is, it's not something, the other thing is, it's not going away. It's going to become, in my view, an existential crisis for districts, right? And it's not limited to instructional staff, it's beyond that as well, right? Because if you can't get the kids to school on buses, instructional staff matters as well.
It's driving this bigger conversation. Our subcommittee talked about it the other morning, right? I think we did. It's driving a bigger conversation around regionalization.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're doing this, but I've got 90-some openings right now at work, and I can't hire them quick enough. And you get to the point where you start to wonder whether you're going to go after the right candidate, the best candidate, because you need a candidate, and you get worn down over month after month after month. Like, at some point, I just need a body, and that can never be the answer. But it's hard to not get there after time after time of just going, I just need a body, and that can never be the answer. But it's hard,
especially when we're talking about the data that came before us.
exactly.
You need talented, responsive, nurturing, smart,
Empathetic, like all
all
those.
of those things. I mean, this is our future, right? If you think about the implications of that, these are our kids who are growing up to, work at your office.
Yeah.
We need the best, so.
And I think one thing that is exciting for here, I know when I came in a few months ago, right, I've been looking at this, right? One of the things is just what you mentioned, you're hiring different folks than you might have hired if you had 100 applicants. So what I've been telling districts I've been working with is you have to treat them different. So when I came in, I think our first conversation, I said, hey, that's, but then you hear about, right, well, already we're doing 3 days for, professional orientation. We're doing all these different supports, right? Which is responsive to that. So although, districts around the state have the problem, they're not all really recognizing it or responding to it because that is the reality. Right? It's required, doesn't mean they won't get to the same place, but sometimes it requires, some extra work to get there.
And the investment in time. So, the disappointing thing is that you offer, they accept, and then they can't. And that's happening. And I expect that's gonna happen all the way up until opening day. So,
September 6th.
yeah.
One more thing to add, obviously the financial perspective, we talked in finance meeting about the long range planning. You don't get the breakage you used to get. So Scott said it's not business as usual. So we gave budget presentations earlier in the year. We said we were planning higher than that entry level wage. It's just that we're coming in higher than what a lot of cases what we planned. That's going to continue to happen. So it's going to change long range, not just us, but for every district moving forward. And for these districts offering significantly higher wages than they ever would think about, there's a real sustainability question, right? In the future for them, which is why we have to be very mindful of that moving forward.
Look at value added as well, because we're never gonna be able to pay 15,000 more or 20,000 more, or even 10,000 more. We're not in that position. We'll probably never be in that position. But can we bring value that other school districts can? And that's where we get to those, I think, are the things we need to look at that make it worth taking the Norwich job. I know for $15,000 less. And there's a lot of stuff out there if we look far enough and get creative and talk to other businesses.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just got to think outside the box these days.
Innovation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to that end, what we have noticed is, the improvement with the website and the companion app. That's been huge. Candidates are looking at our website, quoting our website. So this Choose Norwich campaign is, that's gaining traction on there. And I think, as we exit the school year, getting some of our kids' voices on there will be compelling to candidates as well. So anything that we can do that's different, that sticks us, apart or sets us apart, is going to be key.
You, ever for posting on LinkedIn too?
I haven't dived into LinkedIn. The piece that we need to work on is our higher ed is connecting with something called Handshake. And we use OLAS. So there's a real disconnect between our career centers at local colleges and what we're utilizing as a recruitment. And Handshake comes at a cost of $25,000. So it's great for like a Citibank or somebody who's really getting the ROI on that. We are not. So that is something that we're working on in terms of communication. It's going to hear us.
Do you have like email, are you on email listservs and
There's a lot of education stuff on LinkedIn. I've done a lot of work with LinkedIn in previous lives, so.
sounds like though that like training is not just be a nice thing, but it's gonna become essential if we're not putting it in. Just by virtue of the own learning loss in their college. I'm wondering too, like, just an idea of moving like the community schools, but also incorporating the staff availability for the availability of that kind of stuff to staff. And I know that there's mentor type thing happening in this district. I'm not sure if that's exactly what not, yeah, but like, amping that up a little bit too, because the kids are gonna be also hard to handle. When you don't have classroom control with kids with behavioral and trauma issues, then it's just gonna be.
Jess has created something called New Professionals Academy. It happens about every 3 weeks. And teachers or probationary teachers are invited with their mentors. And most of the time they're being off-site at a different location within the city or within the township. And focused on different topics during that time, brainstorming an hour after school. So it's, we're receiving some positive feedback from staff. And it's part of that stay campaign. Support, and make sure that they feel supported in the classroom. Chance for attention.
And the other piece was having out in the community, hey, you get to see what the car museum looks like, you get to see, you know, like connecting them to, hey, it's a great place to live, teach, and learn, right? And the other piece to your point is, the exact number off the top of my head, but we do have a commitment to train all of our staff in their computer crisis intervention strategies. So it's a 3-day training where they are learning, you know, that trauma-informed instruction piece. So that piece is ongoing, but you're absolutely right. I mean, the classroom, we talk about classroom management, it's how are we, this is who we are, how we do it. So we're getting to know each other, and then we're also getting to know how we work together. And that piece is definitely an area. of growth.
I know we're getting on the topic, but back to the 22 vacancies, are there, I'm sure you're already doing this, but for the people that are just leaving, are there commonalities of why they're leaving, like being reflective of the reasons why? I mean, some, yeah, I understand, but.
So we're engaging in exit interviews. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and a lot of it's, you know, geography in terms of moving back to family or with a partner. That's the bevy of it right now. And those are pieces of.
It's a seller's market. So those people that were commuting 15 minutes a day, there's now vacancies back a little bit closer, right? Similar to what we're seeing in the exit interviews.
It's $5 gas.
But
I mean, $5
Right.
a gallon gas. I mean, I travel 150 miles a day. Makes a difference, you know,
We do.
all this stuff, right? I didn't think it was such a big deal at 375. Maybe like, it's a huge deal now.
It's double.
Yeah, it's basically double. So yeah, if you're traveling from Binghamton, you can find one even a little closer. You add all those things up, it's a big deal.
and even those people that weren't looking, it makes them go, should I look?
Yeah, should I?
The people that had 20 years, in it, they're like, there's no.
Well, I was kidding before that, you know, I spent 8 years in St. Lawrence County, and I kid that I kind of had a preview of this, right? Because we were having severe staffing shortages up there 7 or 8 years ago. And we really looked at where people were moving, and it's exactly what you're saying. Folks moved closer to their home district, right? Because it's a big county, people were driving all over the place, and what we found is, and so it was an interesting conclusion, because, you know, it wasn't salary, it wasn't these things, right? We could have raised salary, wouldn't have necessarily changed it, because people wanted to be in their own district and work in their own district. And that's also an advantage in that we're one of the larger communities here. So that's something that we could, you know, hold people to.
We mirror some of those North Country challenges
Yeah.
because of our geography, because of Utica, Syracuse, and Manatee. in terms of, you know, that community. So, 50, 55, 60. Yeah. So again, it's our reality right now, right? It's just important to discuss. We have a challenge here at CSD. Speaking of challenges,
I think we say whatever it takes.
Okay, home stretch. So bringing it all to the grants, back to the grants. A lot of the work Jess is discussing, the initiatives, whether it's the PLCs or TSS, we're supporting, we decided as a team to support these federal grants. You've all seen that picture on the right before. We kicked off the grant process, worked our way through it. It's been a mess, it still can be a mess, it gives me anxiety. Go to the next slide. We're getting there. So I think we're getting all the pieces of the puzzle together. Those empty pieces, I would consider the compliance that's coming with the grant, you know, reporting and everything the state needs versus what the federal government needs from us. And we'll get more of that in a minute.
it's similar, like I would liken that to gas prices. Compliance and reporting pieces have doubled, if not more. With respect to the federal grants that Ryan's talking about, so.
Yeah, so I mean, this image, we know what we're doing with the grants. We have a plan in place. It's really just some of those pieces of the puzzle that are left. Okay, so a refresher on what we received or what we have access to in terms of the grants. We have the CARES Act, CARISA or CIRSA, whatever you want to call it, is in the middle. The American Rescue Plan is off on the right. So this is just a high level overview of what we received as a district. CARES Act on the far left is done. It's closed out. We spent all of those funds. That wasn't anything in addition to. That actually was, at that time, the governor in his budget cut out that portion of our budget and replaced it with the federal funds. So that's why it says underneath general fund, it really was just planting general fund monies that they move over to the right. We received 1.9 CIRSA funding. That will be tracked in federal fund or is being tracked in federal fund. We have until September of 23 to spend those funds out. So that's kind of our priority focus right now is making sure we have all those CIRSA funds accounted for and planned to be spent. Far right column, the American Rescue Plan. Once we're a little further along in CIRSA, we're going to focus our efforts on getting American Rescue Plan funds spent down. That doesn't mean we're not currently. We still are. We have a plan for it. We have an extra year to spend those funds. And again, that's going to reminder in red, these all come with expiration dates, and that's why we'll talk about it in a minute. And we spoke about this in Finance Committee. This all ties into that long range planning. So I'm not going to read this to you, but again, this has been presented in the past. We got these funds. These were all the restrictions or the requirements that they placed on the ability to spend the funds. Right, so 20% off the top was allocated for addressing their state's definition of learning loss, social, emotional, and academic needs. Go through that next long list of bulleted items. You have pandemic response, so getting sanitizing supplies, machines, equipment, indoor air quality, addressing those concerns, filters, doing capital project work to replace HVAC, which is something we did. A bullet third from the bottom, we have to allocate 210 each on summer enrichment and after school programming. So we've got some great opportunities there to use that funding. And then just a reminder, it's all based off the title counts from 2019 to 20.
Think about the stay and play options. Have you guys talk about this?
By the way, those are big up. So I'm really proud of middle and high school teachers. They have a lot of offerings this year. So look at those with your kids. Encourage your kids to sign up. I think it's a great way to connect with teachers. Too, they can sign up for 1 2-week camp.
I even like one day. Really, life skills.
Asian people sign up.
Can you teach my eighth grader executive functioning?
It's more than a 1 day.
But you know what though, I mean, if you think, Ross, about coming in over the summer and just building that nice relationship with the teacher, that smaller environment, what a great way to get kicked off the school year.
So taking that previous slide, this slide just outlines the things we identified, not just us, 3 of us at this table. We met with our administrative team. We put out surveys to the community to try to solicit feedback. Here's all the things we can spend this on. What do you want to see us actually use these funds for? So Jess already covered most of this. First bullet, getting those MTSS and PLC initiatives off the ground. After the fact, we put in those PLT lead stipends in there to empower teacher leadership, as well as keep those initiatives moving forwards. All sorts of screening tools, Jess mentioned MyMass2, OC services, which brought in distance learning at the time, a bunch of others. Third bullet, really important, community partnerships for LPPs, for students, child, for social services, county with behavioral health, all those things that we normally would have either through a title grant or a general fund or now use the One thing I'll touch on, pandemic response. Without the Wayfair contract, so that's the 9 staff we buy through that service, we wouldn't be able to have school. We couldn't find, or we still can't find custodians. Recently found one who's been subbing, which worked out great, but we were seriously struggling in that area. Without these funds to do that, to get that kicked off, we wouldn't. In that same vein, we purchased equipment, a ton of scrubbers that help to try to cut down on time and staffing needs. So these grants have given us the opportunity to be creative in what we do, and try to address some of those pandemics. Just touched on, the stay and play program. There's money we've set aside to supplement stay and play over the summer program, STEAM purchases, which will also play into the initiatives that we're working on with STEAM programming during the year. More on that. Last thing I'll hit is the HVAC capital projects. We did set aside 1.7 million in grant money to update a lot of very old equipment and to supplant or supplement actually our capital projects. So finally, next steps. So we will be soliciting feedback again from the community through our new thought exchange tool, which you guys saw we used as part of the budget process. So that's a great tool. We'll be using it more frequently to try to get feedback forwards. We have to repost the plan July 1 on our website, so that thought exchange is really going to help us to get a survey. Biggest piece for me, compliance and reporting. So in the grant itself, we have staff positions that will continue after grants dry up. We can support sustainably, but there is so much work that's being done in the background. Our business office staff.
Big shout out to Wendy Burdick, if you see her. Thank you.
A lot of reporting going on, a lot of compliance, a lot of headaches. I was just at a conference recently. Even the fact that that CARES Act grant is done, there are still reporting that we're trying to. And finally, long range planning. So we spoke with the finance committee about this. When these grants dry up, there's a lot of things in there that's really good stuff we want to continue working. As you know, we're getting that phase 2 foundation aid that's plans next year, 23-24. We're right now working on what are those things that are in the grant that we can use that second round of phase to support and keep that moving forward. So that'd be a discussion we have the finance committee and also here.
Said differently, right? Just again, just thinking about those who interpret it differently. Those things that we're currently using grant monies for, we're going to bring that back into general fund, right? There's a lot of conversation around that, a lot of planning around that, and subcommittee saw some of that.
And it's mostly the state good on that. So if they back out of that, it all goes away. So very important that we continue to pay attention to the legislation. They continue to uphold their promise of making us whole.
Questions, thoughts, comments?
The thought exchange, what's with the last one you did? Was there a good return on it? Are people doing it?
86 users,
Out of,
86 comments rather. A lot of people went in and liked other people's comments, which was the surface, right? But we took all that information, put it into the Q&A, and brought that back out to our community.
I wonder if you could partner with businesses to get more people to do it, or an easier tool. I went into it on work hours. I got stuck on it, but there's different, I can't talk, but there's different tools for like different people. Someone with a low literacy rate probably would have a hard time following that. I just think it might be good to look at different ways to get feedback back from the community. And I don't know exactly what that is. I'm not suggesting focus groups or anything, but I'm rambling.
Well, you did it at itself, though. I think the cloud exchange is underutilized.
like a very piece, right? How do we?
Right, that's what I was thinking, like partnering with MIT or some,
How do you increase participation?
yeah, how do you, get buy-in, yeah.
That's our plan, right? You know, with this next stock exchange, is to continue to drive more traffic, and we do that by there's a marketing plan, communication plan around that. And we're actually, talking about different ways to support that, with different staff. Some of that. One of our classes for next year is
Media marketing and video production.
imagine, right, a teacher in a class owning some of this type of sort of showcasing some of the things that are happening in the district and soliciting feedback. It's one of our goals. We're not a teacher for that yet.
I was just gonna say, what,
So.
Yeah, I mean, a diet itself is a, it's a job. So for example, like one community, one book, right? So there's a great partnership with the community in the district. And so, we had a reflection meeting today to think about, okay, what are the things we want to memorialize to move into planning for next year? And communication is a big one, right? So we had chapters all, read alouds on our website, but if we're pushing people to the app, they couldn't access, parents to the app, people couldn't access, right? So those are all things that you're thinking about, like well-intentioned to have it on a website, but most people are. So being really thoughtful about those pieces is just growing in our practice.
The latest insight that I saw said we're just under 700 of our families that are connected with our app as well. So we have to drive that traffic.
out of how many?
The app that when we post goes to a live feed, feeds the website, feeds Facebook, feeds Twitter, and has the ability now to shift to, instead of the school messenger, which is the email that you get, it's going to send you a text message and potentially a voicemail. So you're going to get a text message to say there's snow day.
I don't want to listen, I'll never listen to it.
Well, probably post your phone or take your phone, right?
Great, I think we're
Yeah.
getting,
Yeah.
So starting to play with
Yeah,
it
I
now.
love it.
But you have to, what the unique piece about this app is that you have to enable notifications on your end, the user end.
Yeah.
So we gotta do a campaign around ensuring that people know they have to go in and enable that feature. Which we're talking to the company all the time to say, stop it. Make that a default, right? There's all reasons why they can't, right?
Well, and also like saturation, right? You want it to be a big deal if there's closing, right? Versus, hey, there's an art show, like important, right? But like, we don't want people to turn that off.
So when you post a message, you literally have to select, will it notify people or will it not? So
All pieces.
we're certainly getting better in that area, right? But
Sounds like you feel like the foundation is in place. It's just how do you utilize the service and the best to meet the needs of.
Well, I would tell you, it's not really a service, right? The service end of it is us, right? And it's just a capacity issue. So we still, we could have.
So for the budget, we responded to every single question that came through. Responded and posted. So at the end of the day, if we don't answer the questions too, it's kind of, it's-
Right.
we're asking questions of us. we should-
And to your point, Roz, there's another feature on Thought Exchange where you can engage people. How to use it during the retreat, right? In that live forum, you're able to share.
Yeah, I always think of the parents that aren't gonna understand the thought exchange of having on their phone. Yeah, because you would have like zoom it out. And just consider the audience, that maybe there's a different way to get their feedback.
It'd be great if we
Working.
could, I mean, this.
Yeah.
people would probably get some, probably, I'm gonna say, but we've done this before, where you have like a concert. And we say, before the concert starts, you have one question. We push out and say, hey, everyone pick up their phone. We got the single question, answer this question, you get instant feedback. And you're not gonna get everyone, but you'll get some, who go, yeah, I'll go to the website, answer the single question.
Yeah.
Then you do something different at an athletic event. Hey, we're in between, we're changing.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah, I mean,
You're absolutely right.
It's a captive audience, like when you have to drop your daughter off at 7:15 to get ready to play the violin, you're sitting there.
Yeah.
How are we better utilizing that time?
We have one plan for graduate. Just kidding.
You're in it actually now.
Rate Mr. Ryan's dress today.
Yeah.
You might get a lot of
Solid
participation there.
too. Good. Any other comments?
Yes, but I can wait until the discussion.
Which is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment that I think it's very important to recognize the workload that Mr. Ryan, you and your, whether it's administrators, teachers, whoever, has right now. I mean, the capacity issue. When I hear that administrators are subbing in classes, you know, that's tough. We're at our limits when it comes to capacity. So, you know, this was excellent, this presentation. I appreciate the year-end recap and seeing all that information. It's great stuff, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. And just getting us through the end of the year has been amazing, especially with lack of substitutes and administrators subbing classes and teachers picking up extra classes to fill in. It's
By the way, that's the only way that happened.
Yeah.
Is because they were the teachers saying, yes, I'll come.
Yeah.
Sometimes 2 additional dollars, if not 3 a day, giving up lunches. So
Which takes its toll.
that's off to them.
sure does.
And
Sure
it's even getting that email to say, can you, like, you feel compelled because.
Right.
For the kids.
So thank you for all that work. Anything else, Mr. Ryan? Okay, so we'll move on to item number 3, discussion item of communication. Yeah. Something in particular that we want to hit on that.
And I also wanted to see if we could add another item under discussion item to briefly see if there was any action items from the speakers. Would that be appropriate, or
Action items from
like
the-
listening
yes,
to the
from the
speakers that came up and the issues they brought up? If we could, if anyone wanted to discuss anything about that. Or maybe.
I think sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna say, I think communication was put on there because I think there are
Yeah.
various members like on board that received feedback about poor communication. I don't think it's been quantified into what it is about, various things. I think the explanation of how the app works and doesn't work at this point, and I think it's a little bit. Just, you know, I think people want to need to know exactly where to go to get information, and if they cannot find it, you know, I thought it would make a big deal about it, and talk about it to somebody, and I guess that's where I was coming from with lines for communication on there. I do think that at least my own opinion is that, you know, as a board, we can create communication with the community in terms of like, how do people understand what our role is? How can they know how to navigate channels to have their needs met? And to understand why that has to be that way. That I think would be on our shoulders to have to. I see this like community education. So perhaps that's a separate thing than communication, but I think people may feel more communicated with if they feel like they can trust us to get straight answers. I don't know. And can we clarify our role on what we are supposed to be doing, and where it might trickle into being unethical for us to stick our nose into something that might not be our role. And I didn't have a clear idea of what that meant, and I think for it, you know, that from my peers. But that's my 2 cents.
So can I just make a quick comment? That's a very specific target for our retreat next week. That is something that I've very pointedly talked to our facilitator about helping us with as a board. About boundaries and and, you know, what the role is for the board when it comes to a variety of things, whether it's governance, whether it's communication. So that's absolutely a piece of that.
You know what's changed, by the way, is the wait time for what's appropriate for it, right, in terms of, you know, parents needing that immediate somebody to talk. They call and they expect to get superintendent or the principal, just like that, as soon as they call. And if they don't, they're immediately going to next steps. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails and or phone calls this year from parents that say, I left a message for the principal at 10 o'clock, it's now noon, haven't heard back yet, right? I know what that principal's doing. So I'm gonna run shoot over to that principal and say, you know what, I promise you, you're gonna get back, I'll make sure I put it on their, you know, their, send them an email, just say, hey, make sure you get back to this parent. But that has really changed over the last couple of years. The speed in which people want responses. And it changes our game quite a bit, right? If they wait till 5 o'clock at night, or if they don't hear from them at 5 o'clock at night, that means they aren't gonna get back to me, and I'm gonna go to social media and let people know how I feel about the fact that the district hasn't responded to my need, right? Instead of presume good intention that, you know what, something out there is a bigger fish in the pan that, you know, for that day or whatever, you know, so I just want to make that comment that we are literally noticing that on a regular basis.
It's the next generation.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the difference.
Yep.
Before texting, it was like, well, emails, you might get to them at the end of the day, maybe it'll be tomorrow. You're okay with that. Now it's
Yeah.
text, and when I text you, I know when you got it, and I expect you're gonna respond. And a lot of the times, we all do this at work. You don't have time to respond that minute, because it's not a one-word response. You better really think about your response. I'm just gonna put yes, or some NVM, something that my kid would say to me, or whatever.
Right.
You're gonna think and put something,
Well, and
yeah.
And, you know, a lot of these times principals are investigating, they're going through all of those back pieces that require a lot of time. And we want them interfacing with kids and teachers during the day as well. So yes, we want to be responsive, certainly to families, but at the same time, they are busy.
I wonder if there's like a need to maybe let down the parameters of expectation too. Like, you know, you are gonna make a phone call and or email. I know the doctor's offices do it. I do it with my clients.
Expect a response within 24
You know,
Yes,
hours.
exactly.
couple days to respond, you know. And you know, if it's a serious crisis, my clients know that I can address it immediately, but I can't do that for you all the time, kind of thing. And just know that if you're in crisis, we will respond adequately, but.
Even a little statement on the chain of command. I love sharing that to people. But, you know, if you email whoever, expect, you know, their expectations. Yeah.
The retreat will be good though, because I look at, certainly Roz, Brian, and I have had 3 superintendents in 4 years of being on a school board. It's a very different model from the first superintendent we had, which also was driven towards finance, and it was like constant. We were pushed, it was more on the business official, it was that kind of stuff. Then we had the interim. Now, obviously, Scott, you're the longest tenured the longest number of years we've had with any single superintendent. Congratulations, it's been a year and a half. I mean, it's sad to say, but
I
that's
had
true.
Gerard
And it-
for a long time.
yeah, you did, right? You had an extra year, but so it's different. And maybe it shouldn't be, but each of those situations, because they were unique, required a different level, I felt like, a different level of us pushing in when we probably shouldn't, but we felt like we had to then an interim, which was very much like, oh, I'm not quite sure what we're supposed to do with an interim. To then now a solid superintendent who, you know, has I believe has every intention of being here for years. It was retirement, interim, now here. So it's different. I think that retreat hopefully baselines a lot of us onto what's expected and needed. It's tough.
You're excited?
I'm excited. I love all of that kind of discussion and it just, you know, I think that's helpful, Brian, that you said that, because I think that, you know, roles and boundaries around roles and clarity about what to do and what not to do has just changes, you know, and so for me, that creates a lot of like, okay, now what am I supposed to do? And what is the right thing to do? And sometimes those aren't the same thing. And but I also think that like our cohesiveness as a force someone to think the way that we think, but more like the trust in each other and knowing that we're all here for the right reasons, and that we're all trying to do the right thing and follow all the right rules for the betterment of the community. That I'm really looking forward to that retreat then, because I think it'll really help us understand how to be more effective. No
Just
trust.
just so that we're all on the same page, everyone's gonna get the information about this book. It is Wednesday, July 27th. Gonna start at 5 o'clock. It's going to be at SUNY Morrisville Norwich campus of the community.
Where is it?
At SUNY the Norwich campus. is SUNY
Oh, okay,
Morrisville.
yeah. That's
the
such a nice
community room.
facility. I was there the other day.
So we'll be there, and we will have a facilitator from NISBO there to lead us.
I want to just piggyback on something Kieran said about educating the community more on what our board does. For example, we have nothing to do with tractors. But that's more the community action committee. I'd really like to see that up and running. And then my other notes are kind of nitpicky, but it's what I hear from parents. So I can easily put it in the email.
I prefer if you talk about it.
Okay.
That's why it's on discussion.
Well, I did an audit of the website and everything today. Our online calendar is a joke. There, nothing is on it. Like the induction thing from last night, the BOCES graduation, half days aren't on there. So I don't know who's responsible for the calendar, but you need like a master list of every year, these things need to be on the calendar. So you don't put an honors banquet on the same night as a BOCES graduation.
Yep.
I heard that from like a couple parents today.
Yeah, so I've heard that a lot, Roz, and so just going back to when we did our calendar, if you guys remember, you approved it, in the spring. The reason there's an absence of all that information on the calendar, which could have been updated now, is because of the uncertainty of whether or not those events could take place, therefore the planning didn't occur. That's why they weren't on that calendar. Since then, it could have been updated, 100% right, but that's why. So that won't be the case moving forward, please know that.
Right. Gibson and Perry Brown are really good with the calendar. They put stuff all the time. I have yet to see anything from the middle school or high school on it. And that's where we have parents saying, do we have those snow days going into Memorial Day? And it wasn't on the calendar. So that's just one example. Social media. I'd really like to see not you guys do social media, either contract it out, find someone else to do it. We had that BOCES person the other year. We paid him $15,000. We cut him loose because we couldn't afford it. Find someone else to do it. You guys, your time is too precious to be posted to Facebook and Twitter. That was my.
So that was a BOCES share, Roz.
Right, but maybe we can find someone to do that.
So I just want to say that the region is actually searching for these people that
Right.
don't exist right now. There are other districts saying we would do a share also.
Well, you can find
But-
freelancers.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what are you saying outside of the BOCES share? Pursue
Yes.
that. Gotcha.
Yes.
Yep.
I'd rather pay someone who is trained in social media marketing, a freelancer. You did it with me when I created the Facebook pages, find that person, and then you guys don't have to focus on making sure you put something on Facebook or whatever.
So talk to me about what's absent from Facebook, because everything that gets posted to Skillshare gets uploaded to Facebook. So talk to me
So
about
there's duplicate postings.
There's
Do
a
you know
bug,
why?
Yeah.
there's a bug on the app, which I've reached out to them.
So is the board aware of this?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so the reason so we've been talking with Apogee. Every user that has Apogee has this, when you push send, right, it loads. And so if the person who's pushing send is impatient and they push send again, because it still looks like it's kind of hung up, then a duplicate goes on. So we've certainly talked to them and they're troubleshooting it right now.
And the tricky piece, if I could just say sort of internally how that works in terms of posts. It's really about posting what we value as a district. So we really try to focus on, like, that's why we're here. So teachers didn't really have that power. So what we've said to teachers in buildings is, as you are engaging in a visually appealing science activity and that kind of thing, go ahead and take some pictures. And so what happens is they take the pictures while they're in the classroom, right? This is what we value. And then it goes to the principal, who's the approver, or the office manager, who's the approver. So that's a difficult, and then what happens is then it goes to social, it goes to Twitter, it goes to Facebook, it goes to the live feed. So that's, you know, we can bring in an outside person, but it's creates another layer of now the principal.
Right.
It
But they
creates
could
another
be
layer.
like overseeing stuff. They can be responsible for the calendar, making sure stuff isn't planned on the same day.
So, and then the back
Like
story
a
to
social
that is,
media manager, marketing manager.
the office managers are compiling all of the data for next year in terms of events right now. So that's part of their work. And so what we anticipate seeing is both a print and digital calendar, because we've heard families, you know, you like the old paper copy on the cork board, so you can say, when's prom? Yeah,
I do.
it's a time that binds people together. The downside to that is it's not live. So once it's printed, it's
Can have it.
history. Whereas then, you know, we will need that person to go back and update.
Right.
So you're pointing out the calendar, which we know is
Oh, that was just. an
absolutely,
example.
no, it's an area,
Oh,
no,
we
it's
talked
real.
about those.
And I like how you phrased it. It is a joke. It's like, we know it's Gibson Day A, we know it's Gibson Day B.
Well, and Perry Brown and
Time is
Gibson
the half
doesn't.
day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is
Yes,
yet.
I mean,
And those two schools do a good job posting stuff to their classrooms. Again, nothing from the middle school or high school. I just think the announcements on Facebook are good, but they're not necessarily, you know, let us know about the parents. I mean, you know, even a simple image, you know, there is school these 2 days, not like a 3-paragraph letter.
Ross, have you seen the daily bulletin coming out?
Those are really helpful. I want, is he still here? Yes, very helpful. And I mentioned that to Mr. Wood earlier in the year when I had a complaint as a parent, not a board member. I always preface that when I talk to people.
So is that something you'd like to see continue?
Yeah, yep. Meant to tell Mr. Graham that other parents find it very helpful. What was that?
Do you think that Facebook is a major source of information
Yes,
for
talk to parents. They're not on Twitter. Yeah.
And we don't
I'm
really
on
spend much
Twitter.
time with that.
Well,
I know.
I'm on Twitter too, but
It's an easy
maybe I check it like once every other week when I'm bored sitting.
somewhere. Okay,
Yeah.
so when you look at the way it's posted, all you do is hit.
Oh, okay.
So
Right.
it just feeds it.
Oh,
out.
yeah, no, and I get that.
We're not preferring one over the other.
Yeah, no, Facebook, I mean, you see the parents on Scanner Nerds and other things, that's where they're getting their information. Before they go to the app, before, you know, they wake up and they're like, and I'm guilty.
So you touch on what I feel the problem with communication is right now.
Right, there's something about it, sorry.
I'm sorry, you touched on what I feel is the problem with communication right now. There's too many avenues to communicate, and we haven't set the expectation of where you will be communicated with. And in my solution, and it may not be the right solution or the perfect solution, but my solution would be to notify every parent at the beginning of the year that any school announcements, any school notices will be blank. It'll either be text, it'll be your cell phone, whatever, a call. It can't be, one time it's on Twitter, one time it's on Facebook, one time it's,
That's what I.
you know, it's a text message, you know, or it's a home phone call. It's gotta be the same avenue every single time, and we have to set the expectation with the parents and the families that this is how you will be communicated with, and this will be the primary source of communication. We can use those other things as a backup, but, and it's archaic, but I can tell you, because they used to send a piece of paper home with every kid, my parents knew everything that was going on. You know, it was up to the kid to be responsible. And I've done this with the athletes I've coached too. I don't call every single parent to tell them that practice has changed from 7 to 6 p.m. on Friday night. I tell the kid, if you're not at practice, that's your fault as the kid. You didn't relay that to your parent. I know I'm taking a risk there, but that's all part of accountability, teaching people to be responsible, but it goes back to, that was the expectation.
Yeah.
Those parents knew when the kid got in the car, anything I need to know? Did coach tell you anything? My parents knew to check my backpack when I got home from school for that sheet of paper. The parents need to know where to go or how they're gonna be communicated with primarily.
So I can tell you the way the app works, just so you know, is as we're posting, the same post is going to go to the live feed that's on the website, that goes to Facebook, and goes to there. So what we could say is if you're a Twitter person, you'll find all our posts on there. If you're a live feed person who likes the website, you'll find the same information there. If you're a Facebooker, voila.
But then am I gonna get a call? School's closed.
Yes.
Why? Now you're changing
Because
the avenue
no,
of
it's- you're
communication.
gonna get it, you're gonna get it through the app, and it's gonna be on Facebook. It's gonna be those same places, but you're gonna get an alert because
Right,
it's
but
time.
now am I expecting that if we change the school calendar, am I gonna get a phone call now? Well, I didn't get the phone call, and that's what I'm hearing.
Gotcha.
That's
So
what
only
I'm
in
hearing.
emergencies are you going to receive that.
Right, but we gotta set that expectation.
Sure.
We haven't done that. I don't know if I'm gonna get a text or a phone call.
Is the school messenger effective June 30th is gone? So the phone call that you usually get, that's gonna be gone, and we're shifting 100% to Skillshare. is what it's called.
And that's fine. I think pinpointing down the communication.
Yes, the marketing of it. Like, this is-
Is so much better than having 20 different ways of communicating.
The problem, right, that we face every day is that our communication is only as good as the contact information that we have.
Right.
So emails are out there, we get kickbacks every time.
Right.
A lot of them. So we have secretaries reach out to the family to say, hey, do you have a new phone number? Do you have a new cell number? Or else give me email that we can put into the system. And we have, I would bet 40% that are kickback. on a regular basis.
Do we have a place that a parent can go automatically and change that information? So is that something
A
that we've
widget
done
or something?
as part of our website? If you have changed your contract or address information, even in my industry, it's not up to me to check to see if you still live at address A, B, and C.
Yeah.
You have to let me know, otherwise your statements are still gonna go to address A, B, and C.
We did a campaign in the beginning of the year and every, to have every parent connected to Google Classroom in case of that. So there was a push for that and we should do that again. I know typically when you send out the calendar and all that, there's the school tool link, like here's your school tool page, guys, like your demographics. If there's any changes, please let us know. That's incumbent upon the person actually filling it out and sending the piece of paper back.
Yeah.
The other piece that's different too is how we're registering kids. So if you go onto our registration page now, parents are actually entering in their information into school tool initially.
Excuse me.
It's, of course, then when there are changes, that doesn't help, but at least it's a clean beginning when they are registering.
Yeah. And even a banner on the website says if you change your address, your contact information's changed, contact, blah, blah, blah. We're using this important.
Remember the student data sheet used to go out every single year, right?
Yeah.
What you said was,
But that's,
the only time it goes out is if it changes. Right? The only time you need to fill it out, especially at secondary levels, if it changes.
If we figure this all out, our financial problems will be over. We can market it to every single district in the state because none of them have it figured out.
Yeah.
Right, and there is no one answer. I think we can definitely get better and improve.
100%.
Yeah, there's no question.
All right, I'm gonna get.
I have just
people-
a
we have
1
whole
minute
lot
thing
of-
of how to save money in the beginning of the year. Ask parents if they want stuff emailed or mailed, because I will spend like 5 days not checking my mail and all of a sudden there's a letter. And I get duplicate letters, so there's cost savings right there. Find out if parents just want everything mailed and not paper copy, and then you save on paper and printing.
Or if you have 4 kids.
Right, you get probably, yeah,
You know, it's all auto gen, but
that's it, I'm done. I'll email the rest.
Yeah, the only other thing was you had brought up the actions items related to Nolan Lawrence.
Well, no, I just wanted, we've discussed in the past, like what speakers have said.
And I believe, from my opinion is that all those things are things that are in the works at this point. I mean, they're
Not all.
not all, but you know, I think there are things that we can definitely address and look at later without getting. Yeah, so.
Well, I think your idea of having one out multiple too. You know, I think that'll be beneficial as well.
Yeah,
sure.
It's my kid, so it's a little jaded, right, by some of it, although I did not. Nobody was gonna speak about it, read it, it's all on that one. But I do think as a board, I'm not saying we're gonna do this, Scott, but I do think as a board, we need to understand the follow-up and the actions that are
Right.
taken.
That's
Because, you know, they're addressing all of us that are sitting at this table. And again, I'm not saying we're gonna do that, but if there's a series of action items that are gonna be taken, then we should all at least understand what those are.
that.
Yeah.
Brian
So-
always explains what that's correct.
So what's really difficult, right, is to think, you hear it, so you're in the audible one, to immediately move to actionable steps, which is why I moved to, I want to have follow-up with it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And there will be a few extractions from that that we can say, yeah, this is what we're doing, or you know what, it makes us think about it differently. So,
Agreed.
yeah.
Any other discussion items? Okay. All right, item number 4, I will entertain a motion to accept all the consent items.
So moved.
Moved by Brian Reed, second by Kieran. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Okay, action items. Approval of the 2022 capital reserve funding resolution. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached 2022 capital reserve funding resolution. Do I have a motion? Motion. Moved by Brian Burton, second by John Williams, I heard first.
It's his last one. We got a
Oh.
lot of stuff here.
Yeah. Any questions or comments?
No worries.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Approval of combined funding resolution for the retirement contribution reserve and retirement contribution reserve TRS subfund. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached funding resolution for the retirement contribution reserve fund and retirement contribution reserve TRS subfund. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Brian Reed,
Second.
second by Brian Burton. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Approval of resolution for capital project change orders. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following resolution for capital project change orders. Resolved that the Director of Business Services be authorized to approve capital project change orders up to $50,000, and be it further resolved that the Superintendent of Schools be authorized to approve capital project change orders in the amount of $50,001 to $100,000, and be it further resolved that the Board of Education be authorized to approve capital project change orders in the amount of $101,000 or higher. Do I have a motion?
I'll do that.
Moved by John Williams,
Second.
second by Roz Francis. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Approval of the 2022-2023 NCSD payroll calendar. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached NCSD payroll calendar for the 2022-23 school year. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Moved by Brian Burton,
Second.
second by Brian Reed. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So carried. Okay. All right, it is number 1. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the elimination of board policy A303.1 individualized educational program diplomas. Do I have a motion? Moved by Brian Burton, second by John Williams. Any discussion?
Can you just explain to me why that's like with that date?
Yeah, so that graduation, I'm sorry, pathway.
Outdated.
It's outdated language.
Okay,
That's why
okay.
it's just gone. There's no need for any reading or anything. It just needs to be removed from the policy. It doesn't no longer exist in state as a pathway.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? opposed? So carried. So the next two are for the first reading, A 406 graduation requirements and A 408.7 non-discrimination and anti-harassment in the school. Do I have a motion? Moved by Brian Burton.
Second.
Second by Brian Reed. Any discussion?
Yes, just clarification. So in the non-discrimination one, we're removing the deputy superintendent because that position doesn't exist, but then the director was highlighted too. So who is the superintendent of schools designating as the official?
Usually it just says designee.
Right, it doesn't say designate.
I don't know.
So I got confused. Well, no, I just got confused. So,
Certainly seek clarification on that. I don't have it in front of me right
well,
now.
no, maybe it just that it needs to be changed or so it
It's for
reads
reading.
better. Yeah,
Right.
first reading.
Usually it says director of business service. And director of teaching and learning. So make sure you get that corrected.
Okay.
Pamela, please make note of that.
Any further discussion on those two items? All those in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Okay, board approval of section 4 varsity and modified girls swimming merger is recommended. The Board of Education approve the attached merger between the Norwich City School District and Oxford Academy Central School District for varsity and modified girls swimming. Motion.
So moved.
Moved by John Williams,
Second.
second by Roz. Any discussion?
Just clarify, will we be, this, I know every fall we do this for soccer too.
Actually, I haven't done it for soccer in a while.
Oh,
We've done
okay.
it for swimming
Yes.
most every year, if
Okay.
not every year.
Yeah, it's been the last. several
The years blend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
There's another one that we do for, sure, yeah, field hockey.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Approval of resolution establishing the, establishing and funding the liability reserve fund. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution establishing and funding the liability reserve fund. Do I have a motion? Moved by Brian Reed. Second. Second by Brian Burton. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So carried. Approval of Head Start lease resolution. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution for the lease of district classrooms for the Head Start program. Do I have a motion?
So,
Moved by Roz.
second.
Second by Kieran. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried.
When I first read that earlier, I thought it said lice.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to accept the personnel recommendation as provided.
Motion.
Moved by Brian Burton.
Second.
Second by John Williams. Any discussion?
Yes, I have some questions. Under annual appointments, I thought Miss Goulden was retired, so why would we be giving her a stipend?
Yep, the stipend is so she would continue to work on the grants, you know, essentially in a consultant capacity, so with that, so she's done, we felt like, you know, her knowledge in that area was something we didn't have in-house.
Should be cross training.
Okay. I have questions about the appointment probationary, but I'll still approve it, but I just need clarification on it. Talk about, or can I talk about positions without naming names, like salary wise?
I would avoid that because typically
Right.
there's only one position, so
Right.
people
Just
understand.
in
who's up.
equality.
We are going into executive session to talk about personnel. We'll be happy to talk about any of these questions.
Okay.
Great, hear that, Chris?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any further discussion or questions about the personnel recommendations? All those in favor?
I
Any opposed? Yep. All right, so yeah, just register Brian Reed as an abstention. It's carried.
Want to check the sheet?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Next is.
Not
public
Pam,
comment.
did you look at the public comment sheet?
Nothing else.
Yeah. Can I say something quick though?
Absolutely.
I just want to thank John. John's last official board meeting, so I know you've added a tremendous amount to the board. Certainly on the finance end, you've been instrumental in the last 3 years in getting us from, a place of shaky ground to a place of much better ground. Yeah, we don't want to get into too much. We don't want to send it.
Can we put Fred Bartlett on a pedestal?
He's a Bryant, so we know he's what he's about. That's right. But yeah, we all owe you a debt of gratitude, so thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Absolutely, thank you. Brian beat me to it, but thank you. No, you're absolutely fine. That's all I was gonna say was, thank you, John, for your contribution to the board.
Don't mess it up, I might be back.
Okay.
Don't miss it on that.
Mr. Ryan, did you want to say something too, or no?
Just again, hoping for an opportunity to say exactly what you guys said. John, thank you for your contribution, and for your support. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Next, I'll entertain a motion to enter an executive session. We're going to discuss personnel and contracts. We will not be taking any action afterwards, correct? We will not take any action. So I'll entertain a motion to enter executive session.
First, second, yes.
Second. Okay. Moved by Brian Burton, second by Brian Reed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right, so
I only
All
did
right.
that like 50 times, right? I screwed up last one.
All right, so that's a 7:58.
Have you said that?
Chris?
Yes, sir.
I forgot, I wanted to say, can I bring some people in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Conversation.